All right, there we are. We are back live on the air. Thank you, all of you who were hanging out, and you might have actually been listening to a replay of yesterday's show if you were hanging out for the last couple of minutes, because I think I have that on a loop. But we are back live here on the wonderful Boots on Ground Radio. The first time we have Mr. Zach Lampley on Boots on Ground Radio. Welcome, sir.
Boots on ground radio.
It's funny. Like this worked out kind of perfectly, because our first broadcast was yesterday, and the first Wednesday of the week or month is today. So look at that. It was like seamless.
Hey, that's what it's like when you get boots on the ground. To end the cycle here of when you say boots on ground, they show up right away.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's kind of like it's fortuitous, really, the way this all worked out, and the name and everything else. When Eric came up with it, we weren't really thinking about, we were focused on the whole idea of contractors, boots on ground, and then we and then it was like, oh wait, like we got the military part too, so that's cool. But then it's like that other part that I was telling you about, where it was like, no, we're going to be everywhere and like have all these people everywhere, and it's one big group basically. It's not just us; it's everyone involved in this thing, that make up the Boots on Ground. So that's kind of the cool part about it.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the audio listener here, because I don't think we have a visual component.
We do not. Not this time anyway. Maybe in the future. But what's that?
New background. I'm watching Screensaver.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, it was funny because I'm not sure which one it's on, but because it went to it did the whole sleep mode or whatever. But I actually we normally have the actual logo behind us when we're doing it, even though we don't actually have a video or anything. So just gets us going, gets us going. Oh, Doug said hello, so he is listening in. Sir. He was listening to our show this morning and chiming in about different things. He's actually expanding out. He's been doing a bunch of hiring and a bunch of interviewing so that he can hire, making those things happen. But we were actually, Eric and I, right before we jumped off of the two landscape vets show, was that we were talking actually about software and how you find different software, because we were talking about the differences between, because Eric had used LMN in the past, and we were talking about, Doug had asked him why he had moved away from that and moved on to another one, and he was talking about how he felt like it was more of an office software, as far as having kind of a dedicated person that's really dealing with it and able to take care of that, versus one where it's more like field based and crew based, really, and the differences between those. And we were just talking about, doing your research, like talking to these different companies, and not just creeping on them online, but actually like talking to the people who are in the business and asking questions and finding out if it works, And I know that like you guys with Crew Control, you are very much into talking with people. And one of the things that I immediately liked most about Crew Control when I first started really learning about the software and the company itself, though, more in particular, is that you all will tell people if it's not right. If you're like, this isn't going to work for you, and you're like, oh yeah, well, you can go ahead and try it. We'll at least get 3 months out of you.
Yeah.
You actually discourage people if that's the case, and especially moving into Aspire as well. I mean, because there's the different multiple platforms. But talk a little bit about that, your experience. I was going to ask you about it, of working for a company that you do, where you have the ability to you're not pushed to just sell as much as possible.
Yeah, I'll go actually all the way back to my initial experience selling Crew Control. So whenever I first started at Aspire during the pandemic, Crew Control had just got brought on their port. So this is 2021, like very early, like January 2021. And Crew Control had just got brought on their portfolio umbrella of products. It was the first thing outside of Aspire Core that was under the Aspire name. And now we know we have Go Ilon, Land One that are under that umbrella too. But at the time, we didn't have anybody to sell it. It was purely run by David Wroblewski, the creator, and Daniel, the co-creator, and who Daniel is still at Aspire now, working on
Is
crew
he okay?
control.
I wasn't sure if he was still. I knew he had stayed on, but I wasn't sure if
Yeah,
he was still there.
and David actually now is a product dev for our parent company, Service Titan. So
Oh, okay.
he rolled up. He stepped away from crew control because he wanted to move on to something different, and then he actually ended up over at Service Titan, and now he does automation work for their additional modules.
Nice.
So he's still around, and he does what he loves to do of, finding out with clients what's going to make the most sense to put into the products that we offer. And so you need people like that in a business from a technical level, obviously, but it's a really healthy blend of, like you said, from a field service standpoint, having somebody like that at the beginning of crew control who is just bootstrapping it themselves and putting it together and saying, hey, what's going to work for you? Let me put it into the system. And then once we get that feature in, you'll buy it and it'll make sense to you, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the dream for everybody that's buying software. Now, when it comes to stuff like, and I'll never talk poorly on a competitor, but we struggle with this too, right? Like the LMNs of the world, the Aspires of the world on a larger scale, it becomes way harder to do that from the standpoint of the like micro nuances that crew control is able to adjust quickly because of the way that it was initially built. LMN, Aspire, Service Autopilot, Jobber, whatever it is, all of those businesses and all of those platforms are so large that it takes way more time to make a tangible change within the system. And we also have to go through and vet, hey, is this going to be good for the vast majority of the people that are using it? Or are we isolating different parts of our client base based on the ask of this? Is this an ask that just this company has? Is this an ask that and so like it becomes difficult. And that's kind of what you were talking about is the office approach, the power user approach, the like whatever you want to call it versus crew control being focused more on field service management in nature and being crew based. It really is that you don't have all the bells and whistles of all the crazy things that show out in your P&L down to revenue, per asset, per like whatever. You're not getting those crazy percentages within crew control, but you're getting all the stuff that you need, right? So like the field pictures, the task lists, the route optimizations, the making sure people are paying you, invoicing component part of it. So you're not just doing handshake deals anymore. And what was cool for me is when David really brought me on, because at the time I was just calling people on the phone and seeing if during the pandemic they wanted to sit down and take a look at some landscaping software, which
Sure.
wasn't everybody's dream. So David actually pulled me up onto the crew control team, and we have a free trial module. So to go back to what you said, we're never trying to tell people like, hey, it will make it work for you. We'll do like whatever.
Yeah.
We don't feel the need to do that because we let you try it out for yourself. And then the other nice part of that is when I first started, there was no way for a company to sign themselves up for a subscription of it. That was like 2 months into me being there. So I would literally have to call people on the phone, ask for their credit card number. Like I had a brother who was in prison in Nigeria and I was going to get them back on the other side. And they would people would sign up. And for me, I still to this day, when I talk to David, mention it, but it's just like such a testament to how good the product is from the level of trust that we're able to establish. That for 2 months, I was calling people on the phone and getting their credit card numbers over the phone so they could use this system.
Yeah.
And that was when it was at its smallest. Now it's like so much more robust of a product from then, but it really instills that confidence that you're doing the right thing for the people that are in the industry when they're willing to, I don't want to say take that risk, but it is a risk in situations like that just because of what it's bringing to their business. So roundabout way of saying, yes, this is more based on the direct, and not saying that all of these platforms aren't, but on a more microscopic level, there are changes that we've made into crew control that one guy asked us for 3 years ago, and now we've taken that and expanded it into additional layers of that same ask. What else could we add to that ask? What else could we hyperfixate on in that? And it's I'm excited about you guys having boots on the ground radio because it's Crew control is for contractors. It's not for landscapers. It was
Yeah.
designed
Yeah.
specifically for like with landscaping in mind at its original build. But within, a year or so of it existing, we realized that, pool companies were using it. There were food delivery services that were using it. There
Oh,
was,
I hadn't even thought about that one.
there was a gym that was using it to schedule its personal trainers. There were roofers that were using it. And so like we got these crazy mixes of clientele base, and it is super nice now to, from a I would say like industry agnostic standpoint, like it is a flat field that has bits and pieces of everything you could imagine for your techs, for your crews, whatever it is that you guys are doing out in the field. You have the ability to use this at a super affordable level to grow you into an enterprise solution, should that be your goal. And that's really the meat and potatoes of what Crew Control brings to the picture.
Yeah, it is an amazing software, and I haven't used it in business, but I've used it enough to understand it and everything, and have, since the early days with David, and he actually, when I first met him, we were talking about when we first connected, and I said, so how do I go about? Because I was like, I told him, I said I don't, and especially at the time, I was like, I work as a groundskeeper for some cabins. I was like, I don't like need the software myself, but I want to be able to understand it. That way I can talk about it and everything. And so he gave me his login he goes, do me a favor, just don't change anything. Because you've got basically admin capabilities on it. I was like, oh yeah, no, I won't do anything. It was just like, I just want to be able to like just see how it works and everything, so that I can focus it. Cause that was back in like the very beginnings of it and everything. And, but before it became Aspire, an Aspire brand and everything. So, but it was just cool, like it's been really cool because of that, like seeing the growth that the Crew Control and Aspire has had, in general, but just seeing how it's morphed and how it's changed. Whereas I've seen other platforms that haven't in that same time period, or they've been very slow to put in changes, where it's like it's one of the things I've always loved is the fact that, and we've talked about this before, but not on this platform, that you guys have, like, there's literally been times where like people have brought up an idea at like a trade show where they're talking to you guys, and then like it gets implemented basically before the trade show's over. It's just crazy.
The best example I have of that, my very first trade show, and if he's listening, he's still a great friend. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago at Ignite because he's now an Aspire customer off of Crew Control. But Austin Hurst from Latitude 41, that's their vice president. We were down in Orlando in 2021 and at a lawn and landscape show, and I'm standing there with David, and he comes over, and they're bro hugging and everything else. I'm like, who is this guy? And David's like, this is one of my very first customers. He actually met me 2 years ago here at this same trade show, basically, and is explaining that whole story to me. And then Austin, oh, it's great, David, I have one thing that I think would make it really good. And, David's like, oh, here we go. What do you got? And thinking it's going to be some crazy, whatever. He goes, what if we could take the optimized route that you guys generate and flip it? That way we were doing it optimized from the furthest stop out into the office. So when we were coming back, we were already close, like
right,
at the end of the day. And David starts, you see the gears start turning his head on what that would take. And we finish out the conversation. He steps away for 10 minutes and comes back, and he's like, I just called Daniel, going to see how fast we can do this, because Daniel thinks the logic's already there for us to just implement that. And I might be able to get it within like the couple days that we're here on the show, put into the system. And they were already customers, but it's really cool to see something like that, because then it's not even 5 or 6 hours. Daniel sends a Teams message to me and David with just a thumbs up and says, good to go. And so we go and check it. I'm like on the floor and I'm checking it, and there's a drop down option on there that says reverse route. I click it, and the whole thing
That's so awesome.
in flip flop. So we're like running around the floor, and we're like, Austin, where are you? Where are you? We find him. And he comes back over, and he sees it, and he goes, what the hell? Like, I didn't think it was going to be, I thought it was going to be like a couple weeks. And then, David was like, we didn't have a huge queue of stuff that we're working on. Let's get it in quickly. But that's a luxury to have when it comes to software companies, because when you get to the like size and scale of, the larger ones that we've mentioned so far,
Mm-hmm.
they have actual tangible release dates that they have to adhere to for their servers and everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah,
And but it's just, that's what Crew Control is. That's what Crew Control is built off of, is that, ready made. We're here. You let us know what works, and we figure out if we can make it work. And that's really what it's been the entirety of the time that I've been involved in the product. So it's just a special thing to be able to connect with the community in that way, especially as a salesperson. You always hear the risk of, you don't want to overpromise anybody anything. I'm the stupidest person in the world when it comes to using a computer. Anybody that's in my life will tell you that.
mm-hmm.
Like, I am one of the least tech savvy people you will ever meet in your life, but I'm really good at understanding what it's going to help a business do. And I can technically, like, if I can use this system, you can use it. I promise you. I didn't have an iPhone until I went to college, and I was still using the flip phone, and I got made fun of for years, all the way through. I just turned 30, so you can do the reverse math on whatever that is. But, it truly is such a user-friendly experience built on the back of all the feedback from our users. And I think that's really what rings true about the success of the product and just the expansion of our client base. We're owned, at the end of the day, Aspire is owned by Service Titan. And so a lot of the process for them is also vetting out, like you said, who is and isn't a good fit for that current product. So a lot of people in the HVAC space or the chimney space hear software and they immediately jump to, there's like 2 or 3 platforms out there and Service Titan.
Mm-hmm.
And Service Titan is like the end all software to get to, same way that Aspire is in the landscaping industry. And people all the time apply, even if it's just a mom and pop shop for HVAC, they'll apply to Service Titan to try and get up and running. And they'll say, hey, you're just not ready. You don't have the dedicated office staff to manage a platform like that. And then so they send them to Crew Control. And that has been such a symbiotic relationship for us, because we're able to not only help customers grow into Aspire, now we're also able to help customers grow into Service Titan. And we're seeing that all the way across the board. And it's so cool to get to switch. I'm a landscaping guy through and through. Like you and I talk about that. But when it comes to these businesses, it's been such a cool experience to learn all the lingo, all of the ins and outs of the trade for all of these other industries that, you just don't even think about, because you're so isolated into the industry that you focus on, that all of a sudden you're learning everything else for contractors, that all businesses are the same. Yeah, there's nuances that change between industries for terminology, expectation, timelines, whatever that is. But whenever it comes down to brass tacks, business management and utilizing a platform like this to better your business, it all comes down to like the same pain points of what it solves. So it's cool to see that in real time.
Well, speaking of real time things and customer asks, Doug had a question for you. He asked if he could put you on the spot with a question.
Oh, please. I will. I got to preface this. At Aspire, I have not personally sold Crew Control in about 2 years. I've helped manage the platform, and it's overseen a lot of its development since then. So hopefully it's not too technical, or else I might have to try and pull up my system and see if I still got it.
Well, he said so. It was something to be added. So he said, and this I almost want to say that you and I had talked about this before at some point, not necessarily on the air, but he asked, is there the possibility in the future of a budget building part in Crew Control, like that being able to have that kind of like LMN is the example that he gave?
I know that they just recently dove back in. I've been seeing the updates they're putting through for different parts of reporting and invoicing in the system for, setting up like automatic registration for when people are overdue, that they get notifications for overdue, like things like that. So from the standpoint of their current path, I would assume that it is possible. I'll have to talk to the direct dev on what their plans are from a budgeting standpoint, and I'll just be transparent here. Part of it too is the growth into Aspire, there's these caveat sections where we never want to overbuild crew controls to the point that people don't feel like they need to eventually migrate for the success of their business onto Aspire. That's the natural pathway that we've put together. And one of the things that Aspire does incredibly well is that P&L and budgeting. So I'm sure that there's probably going to be a layer of budgeting in some capacity in crew control, but it might not be as robust as someone like Doug, who's running a size of business like Doug's, would want in the grand scheme to like continue growing on. At some point, there's probably a strong conversation to have for Doug to sit down and take a look at Aspire. I haven't talked to Doug about the size of his current business since we were on the air together about 6-7 months ago, I think. So
yeah, it's been a while.
He's probably grown quite a bit, but I can put a little nudge out and see if there's anything for budgeting, P&L, stuff like that being thought through on the crew control side and seeing to the extent of what. But that's one of those things you hear about trigger words in sales where all of a sudden, you know, the version of what I said, David's gears start turning, my gears start turning. When I hear stuff like that.
Well, and it makes sense that, you know, that it does make sense as far as what, you know, to your point that you're not the purpose of what you're doing with crew control is not to turn it into Aspire. It's to keep it at a manageable level to where you have those steps. And it's not because you're, and for those listening, it has nothing to do with like, oh, we're not going to, you know, build this a certain way because we want you to spend more money with Aspire. It's not like that. It's that there's no reason for a company to spend the money on the development side when they already have a software that does the same thing. It's just that would be kind of redundancies, you know, that you're building at that point.
And it's a ton of like market research too, from the standpoint of finding because every company that's out there, they will have some level of qualification point. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be as simple as crew control, where all you have to have is, you know, an EIN.
Oh, sure, sure, yeah.
And $30 or $50 a month. Like that's what you have on the table. But you know, some of these other larger ones, they'll have specific qualification points. And for us, when people start asking about different parts of, and it's great, right? Because that means that Doug has grown to the point that budgeting is a key part of his business. A lot of times, the early phases of businesses, budgeting is not on the table. It is.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Say yes to every piece of work and chase down invoices and do the best that you can. Provide excellent customer service so you get that return work. But it's fascinating because there's these areas and pockets of conversation that become very driven into, okay, let's maybe have a conversation for you talking to Aspire. And a lot of them are things like super high level job costing. So whenever people start asking about wanting to know their profit margins before they've even estimated a job, that's a pretty good indicator that you're getting to the point of business that either you've done this before and you started your own business now and you really want that to start your business, or you've grown to the point where you realize, hey, we've been doing work for the last couple of years and we've been eating money on a couple of these jobs unknowingly. But you have the visibility into those numbers to know that. And that's really when it turns into, oh, okay, like we're getting closer to an enterprise level solution to tell us at any time, don't even bid this job at this rate or you lost money before you even set foot on the job site. And I heard a great quote, you know, you get to 1 million by saying yes to everything. You get to 5 million by saying maybe, and you get to 10 million by saying no. And that's like the hustle of this industry from a business standpoint, to where like I'm a yes guy. I will say yes to just about anything, especially whenever it comes to work. I always make the joke I'm a certified bag chaser because I just put in the work to make sure, you know, like I get what that is. But at the same time, like that's how people are operating businesses. And there does need to be that level of oversight to know, am I doing the thing that's healthy for my business, or am I just working for the sake of busting my ass?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, Doug brought up a great point. He said, I think that, let's see, hold on a second. It went away just as soon as I pulled it up. There we go. It's back. I think that the problem is with 90% of small businesses, or that's the problem, I should say, with 90% of small businesses. He said he wished that he'd have worked on building a budget before hitting the 500K mark so he could see it helping. you know.
Absolutely.
And it's true. Like you work and you work and you work and you're focused on that dollar amount and not how you get that dollar amount. Kind of like you were saying, say yes to everything to get to a million. You gotta figure out what it is, what your goal is, but then also how that goal is going to work. And because otherwise, if you get to there and you're like, okay, I made my goal, you won't have any idea of how it actually happened unless you're budgeting, unless you have that P&L, that proper P&L where you really know your numbers. Like Wayne Voles always says of profit time, he always says, you got to know your numbers. You got to know why you charge what you charge, not just knowing what you're charging. You can't just throw a number out there on a dartboard scenario. You
Right.
got to be able to see it and know why you're charging for that much, and know when your guys are going out. I think too many people. It's funny. I know so many guys that are, and they're successful and everything. They're not. It's not like they're losing money per se, but they could be making so much more. But they focus on. They're like, okay, so I have two guys going out and mowing this yard, and I'm charging whatever $80 for this yard that I'm mowing. So I pay my guys X amount, and so I'm making this much off of it. I'm like, but what about the mowers? What about the truck? What about the truck? All those other things that are involved in that software like Aspire, especially when you're getting to that level where you have multiple crews and you're really focusing on growing that business, and you're maybe looking at hiring an office manager, or you want to be the office manager and not be in the field.
Right.
All those different things. That's where you really got to, and that's where you guys from Crew Control, from Aspire, everybody involved, no matter which part of the company I'm referring to, you all have that same mindset of, we are here to help you. If we think that you're ready to grow, then we'll help you grow. If we don't think it's time yet, then we'll tell you, like, wait until you get X, Y, and Z in place, and then we can continue this conversation. But in the meantime, maybe here's what you can do to flex that, and it's just, you guys are really great and one of the only ones I know, and it's not like I've had in-depth conversations with every single platform, but I've had enough conversations to know that you guys are the ones to go to if you're trying to grow your business.
Yeah, and I think too, because I want to paint this picture as well. There are things that every single software platform out there does the best, and it's no different than if you, like, for example, I tell people this all the time. I live in a pocket of Chicago now that is very like densely populated. It's a Hispanic area, so we have 8 to 10 mom and pop shops that are all Mexican restaurants on our street. And when you move here, everyone tells you this place has the best tacos. This place has the best margaritas. If you want to go to enchilada, you go to this one. And so it's like you have this whole list of, they're all Mexican restaurants, right? But every single one of them has their thing that they're the best at.
Mm-hmm.
And so Aspire, instead of deciding to be the best at one thing, did everything it could to be the best at everything at once from a scalability standpoint. So a lot of other systems out there, like like I'll use LMN, for example. LMN is an absolutely incredible bidding and estimating platform. I will never have anything bad to say about any things that they have in there that are associated with job costing, bidding, estimation, build out. Like, I've seen it firsthand, and it's very impressive.
Sure.
Where it starts to lack in different areas is around what you just mentioned. So for me, at Aspire, for how the sausage is made here, I am very focused as a manager of our client account executives. What I focus on is anything that's not the core product. So Doug is a customer of Property Intel. That falls under my purview, as well as GPS, payment processing, and marketing automations. And so for me, and this might be the first time I've ever talked about this on any show, actually, is I'm a huge numbers nerd. I'm not great at, the actual technology piece, but I'm really good at percentages, efficiencies. If you're familiar with lean analysis from Toyota, of how they, we started using this size box, and we actually found out that we could ship X amount more and we save this amount of money. Like, that's the stuff that, like, makes my brain go crazy. And so I try to do that with businesses where, we're talking about, you're already on the Aspire core platform. Now let's talk about the efficiency of your fleet. You just told me that you don't have any registration on the amount of time that you're spending idle in your vehicles. Well, every hour of idle is the equivalent to the wear and tear of a full tank of gas on your car. So your preventative maintenance, if you aren't aware that you're idling, all of a sudden your preventative maintenance bills are through the roof. You put some diagnostic like equipment hardware in there that shows you and it alerts the guys in the car to turn it off. All of a sudden your idle time drops. You're saving $60,000 a year on maintenance, like whatever that looks like. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the stuff that like for me really drives and pushes the needle. But all that to say, that's something that at the crew control level, when you're really getting your business started, you're not looking for, idle hour stop time or,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
enhanced level of what's my click rate on this email campaign that I'm sending out to try and get work one back. But you do have to know your numbers, because all of a sudden, whenever you look at, and back to Doug's point of knowing your, like the budget piece, if I can look and say, hey, my residential maintenance, I'm making a profit margin that's 3%. And then on my commercial maintenance, it's 8%. All of a sudden the conversation becomes, how do I move from
Right.
residential to commercial? Or how do I do more of this type of work? If you're an enhancement focused company and you're making a ton of money off enhancements, how do we switch our model from just being the regular mow and blow guys to doing hardscaping or landscape architecture or whatever the additional pieces of that look like? And you have to know your numbers to do that. So it's definitely a testament to businesses that get to the point that they realize we don't have visibility into our numbers. We need it, because that means you're growing at an exponential rate to say it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And by the way, Doug said he loves Property Intel.
Quick plug.
Speaking of Property Intel, is that integrated or no? Because it was the last time we had talked. It's like a separate software from like Crew Control and the others. It's still that way.
So it was set up for direct integration into Aspire. From a pricing standpoint, like that's where all the
okay, so it is integrated to Aspire. Okay.
Yes, and then so we have the Property Intel platform doesn't directly integrate into Crew Control, and so we changed the price for people that are using it on a Crew Control level. That way, it's not a huge gouge, because the true value and the difference of prices, having it integrate into your Aspire system, it pulls all of your kits, catalogs, purchasing,
sure.
and your production rates, and it builds out everything for you. You can still do that without it integrated, but you have to build that more yourself inside the system. And it's not going to, for example, in the Aspire system, I want a yard of volcanic black mulch from site 1. I click the button, it automatically orders it through my estimate going live whenever it gets approved. So things like that, like those levels of automation in Crew Control, that inventory tracking isn't there, like those pieces of the puzzle. So it doesn't make sense to charge the same amount. So people use them side by side, because you can use them side by side, take the PDF out of Property Intel. You can share view it to your client, so they can actually even go in and see the aerial imagery that you're utilizing, different parts of that. I hope that Doug, if you're out there, I know you are, hopefully you guys have started using it for some of your snow build out. I know that we're talking about doing snow build out with motion pathing for the arrows for a dump and things like that. So it's just very multi-use in that space as well.
Yeah, he commented while we were talking. He said, let's leave it different. Let's leave it separate.
Yeah.
He likes it separate, and that's totally. I get that part too. And that's the part that I couldn't remember, because I knew that the last time we had talked, we were talking about the different integrations, and that's obviously part of the kind of the question or the conversation we're having as far as what the difference some of the differences are with Crew Control as far as when you move up and when you tier up, and that's a perfect example of it. Is that there's like you said, there's not a reason to have that automation at the Crew Control level when you're trying to get crews out there, you're trying to manage your guys so that you can spend more time selling more business. And then when you get to that point, then it makes it easier to be able to do those. But there's a big difference when you're talking about trying to manage crews versus automatically ordering mulch from site 1 when the bid's approved. That's a big leap between those two scenarios as far as what you're doing every day. But he said as far as Property Intel, he said he used 90% for snow, 10% for green, like as far as lawn care. So, which, I mean, it totally makes sense especially for snow.
Yeah, and I love the part of that conversation too is like everything, any software company that you're talking to is a healthy software company, they can prove out to you your return on investment. And
Mm.
the difference in like those prices between the two style of platform of when you're a Spire customer versus Crew Control customer for property intel, like that's exactly why we did it, because it's way harder to prove out the return on investment when you're not getting all those ins and outs. And so they made almost a separate version of property intel that doesn't need to pull all that data to integrate. So it's still able to be used not only by Crew Control customers, but there's just people who aren't customers of anything else at Aspire besides property intel that might have
Oh,
moved over.
gotcha.
No, they might have moved over from Go Ilon during the transition process or Land One, but it's it's fascinating just to see the level of like care and diligence that Aspire as a company puts into making sure that they don't alienate anybody. They try to find a solution to make sure anybody in the green industry has an answer to their questions in a product form that helps their business run better, and that at the end of the day they look at what they're paying for it for a year and say, oh, I've done 5 times the amount of money that I'm paying for this thing
Yeah.
by the end of it. And we do surveys to prove that. So I'm thankful for that because it makes my job significantly easier, because it doesn't feel like I'm selling people used cars. And I also, in the same vein, get to tell people when it doesn't make sense, because
Yeah.
we have the ability to go in and run numbers ourselves and say, yeah, I mean, what you guys are doing right now, this might actually end up costing you more money than it's going to make you with the
Well,
way
and
that you're.
you have a truly free trial period
Yeah.
with Crew Control. It's not one of those like psych, you forgot it was Tuesday.
No credit card sign up to start. None of that.
For those listening, no credit card. Like, I want to reiterate that, no credit card to sign up. It's not one of those things where you have to sign up and then, like I said, you get going and all of a sudden you forget about it, and then you see that statement happens and it pops up. That's one of the coolest things I thought about Crew Control when I very first heard about it. And I was talking to David, and he was like, yeah, no, you don't have to do anything to sign up for it, because that's how I found out about that, was actually when I was talking to him about it. He goes, well, I mean, if you want to, you can just sign up for it, because there's like a free trial period. Like, you don't have to put your credit card on or anything. So, because he knew that I wasn't going to be a customer, because I wasn't running cruise, so at that time. So it was like this, I was like, wait, so there's nothing, there's no strings. And he's like, nope, no strings, just sign on, like figure out if you want to use it, and then if you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it. So I think that's really cool, because but again, for anybody listening to this, whether it's you're listening live right now or if you're listening to this in the recorded version of it, like, I highly recommend picking up the phone and getting a hold of, or doing a contact form, whatever it may be that you want to do, but talk to a real live person at Crew Control, because they have them. and or Aspire, or whatever it is, the size of your business, obviously, and they'll help you with that, figuring that out as well if you're curious. But talk to them, just have a conversation, because it is not a pressured sales scenario. These guys just want to help and want to be able to guide you in what they think might work. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work for you, as far as when the conversation comes to it. But have the conversation, because there's so many things, I think, that even in this day and age, everyone's gotten, I think, into like, I'll Google this, or I'll look at YouTube for this, or I'll do that, or I'll go on this website, and they try and find all the information and think that that's how they're going to find it all. But there's always going to be something that you don't find, and it's not because it's maybe not on the website, but you didn't click a certain tab, and so you didn't see that there's a capability that you were curious about. So that's where I think we need to get back to having actual conversations.
Yeah, and the cool thing is we do a standing demonstration of Crew Control every day. So there's one, like, you can obviously reach out and the team will help you set up more individualized time, but we also just do a rotating every single day. There's a live demonstration of the product. That way, whoever wants to show up can show up. And there's times where there's 2 people in there. There's times when there's 30, like, wanting to see it. And it's just been super impactful for us to, over the years, be dedicated to what you just said. It's just the person to person conversation. Nobody wants to, my grandpa always used to say, everybody wants to buy something, but nobody wants it sold to them. And that's kind of the model.
There you go.
We fall into that model. We try our best not to feel the need to sell, we're all just people that have some kind of tie to this industry, whether you're like myself and used to work in it directly, out in the field, or your family owned a landscaping business. But at Aspire, across our entire employee base, we have over 580 years of landscaping experience. So it makes it really easy on a conversational level to relate to people. So then all of a sudden, I'm having a conversation with somebody about the things that I used to do and what the system does to overcome the things that we just didn't have technology for back in the day. And now it's like, oh, well, this guy used to do it, and now he works at this company and does this. And like, I rarely feel like I have to ever say, so what, are you going to sign up for it? Or are we going to have to wait till next month? That's just not the nature of what we do. So it is nice. It's very refreshing to get to have that level of sales at a business like this.
Yeah, because it's not something it's not something that people are used to. I think that there's, even as we're having this conversation, people are probably listening going, yeah, right. There's something, just because it's so rare,
I promise, come talk to me and watch me not sell you something.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And it doesn't, and it's, not to use another cliche, but it sells itself. It really, you don't have to sell it, because it's a matter of, I think it's because it comes down to the fact of, is this something you can use or is it not? That's all there is. Like, it's not a mower where it's like, well, there's 5 mowers to choose from, and I'm not sure like which one. Well, this one has a nicer seat, or this one has, a better ride. This one cuts better, whatever it is, and all these different things. It's with the software. These are the capabilities of it. Will that work for you? It's kind of it's almost like a yes or no scenario versus a pick one, choose one, type deal. But then also, like I said at the beginning, it grows with you, and you can, and it's so easy to use. That's the thing too. Like, it doesn't, you're not talking about 2 weeks of onboarding and classes and all the other stuff. And there's obviously if you scale up and you go to the bigger ones, yeah, there's more integration involved and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying that if there is that scenario, then it's a bad software or anything, because it just depends on the size of the business and all. But with Crew Control specifically, it's very, very easy to get going with it. It's not something where you're going to be up late at night for days trying to figure everything out. So I think that's the other thing that has that. When David and I first met, that he had talked about, that he wanted to make it as easy as possible, so that anybody could use it, rather than just, someone having to sit at a desk and at a laptop. They pull out their phone, do what they need to do, and then, move on with the day. So it's very, very integrated that way. But when you're talking to people about, and I know you're not on the ground side of Crew Control now, as far as doing that, that full integration. But back when you were, calling people and working at that level, what were some of the biggest reservations people had when you started talking to them about, like, oh, you should use this software? And they're like, software.
Like literally, like
I have a whiteboard and a Sharpie. I'm not afraid to use it.
Yeah.
Or whatever not Sharpie. That's not a good whiteboard thing. Expo. There we go. No Sharpies on the whiteboard.
So I think this is different. It's obviously different company to company. One of my favorite stories to tell is, like, my dad is a contractor. He owns his own home improvement business. So when I first started working for Crew Control, I tried to convince him to start using this system to help him build out his estimates and do this, that, and the other. And of course, and this is one of the things that I got very often, and it's more people who prefer to have a lifestyle business, to where their business doesn't grow to a level that they have to keep up with it. My dad was more of my business is here to make ends meet until I'm able to retire. And he never had any dream of me taking over the business.
Sure.
It was kind of his own thing. And so whenever I'm trying to show it to him and everything else, he goes, this would have been great 20 years ago, but I'm 3 years away from calling it quits, whatever that is. So like, that's one of the objections we got, is kind of the they're super new to technology as a whole. And it feels like it's a tough ramp to go from whiteboards and pieces of paper, time schedules and stuff like that, to something that's completely on your phone or on your computer. Like, there is a huge lift for business owners who weren't born into the technology era. And Crew Control tries to bridge that gap with a lot of technical resources to make it more accessible. To your point earlier, of like us calling people and being like, "Do you want to sign up for this?" Over half of our split of customers actually don't even sign up by talking to a rep. They go through the entire free trial by themselves. We have
Interesting.
virtual walkthroughs that
Yeah.
they can do and not even have to talk to another human being if they don't want to. And then they get to the end and it's like, here's where, hey, your 14 days are up. Here's where you can sign up, get everything onboarded. Here's your virtual resources to do it. And then they can do that. Or they can reach out to us in the process because we email and call like during your free trial, but there's plenty of people that are too busy to take those calls at normal business hours or whatever. So we wanted to make sure there's a blend of, hey, this is how you use it. And I think for the biggest pushback I've gotten whenever I'm selling Crew Control is people that aren't using any other form of technology in their business are super apprehensive to usually the dollar sign that comes with a piece of technology. But it's equipment the same way that your truck is, the same way that your mower is. It's just a different form of it. You might not be using it as handily out in the field, but it's going to do all of the things that you hate doing at your dinner table while the rest of your family's talking about how their day was, and you're, eating your chunk of meatloaf and you got a couple of estimates next to you that you're writing out by hand. Like, as someone who's lived that firsthand, like for a decent chunk of their life, those are the things that when you talk about like return on investment, it's time. It's like the mental effort, it's rest, it's vacation, like feeling confident to step away from the business for a short period of time and think it's not going to run aground while you're gone. And all of that, like that's truly what the technology piece of this industry brings to the table. We're not trying to replace your employees. We're not trying to replace, like whatever it is. We're trying to make sure that they're doing whatever their role is in your business and yourself to the best that you could be doing it, because you didn't come into this industry when you were a laborer and you decided to open your own business. At heart, you are still the best edger. You're still the best, landscaper, like whatever it is that you're really good at in the landscaping space, but you might not be the best business owner when it comes to the ins and outs of, like Doug was mentioning, for like budgeting and things like that. You didn't go to business school. I didn't go to business school. Like I would always rely on somebody if I was opening a business in that nature, or I would, go back to school to figure out how to do it. So, but instead there's this piece of equipment that replaces the need for that. There's like all the numbers and everything else for reports and build outs. So it's this really interesting relationship that I think we're the only generation that will get to have these conversations, because every other generation of business moving forward will have been born into technology.
That is true. Yeah.
So we're on the last dying frontier of people who didn't grow up with a cell phone that are now being told, hey, by the way, I know over the last 30 years, you've seen every scam in the world with this technology stuff and the internet, but now put your entire business up in the sky.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so that's the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome. But I think that Crew Control does a really good job of making it feel like, okay, I don't have to be a genius to use this thing. I get what it's doing for me from a time management standpoint and visibility into my business. And then it like starts to offset a little bit. And there's still plenty of people that are like, don't ever call me again with your computer. Like, which is fine. But I would say, to answer your question on the biggest hurdle, it has always been that. It has always been just getting the industry to fully buy into what technology can bring to their business.
Yeah. No, I really like that point that you made, that it is a tool just like anything else. It's just that it's not in a toolbox. It's not in the back of a truck, but it's still a tool that you're using for your business, and it's viable. And it's the generational thing you mentioned. It's very, very true. In fact, Eric and I were just talking about that because he teaches at the local college. He's a professor of horticulture there, but he is also the department chair. And so there's like the electrical division or classes and everything that falls under his section as far as department head. And he was talking with the the head professor there for electrician, and they were having a discussion. And he told him that there are more electricians over the age of 80 than under the age of 30.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it speaks volumes to what you were just talking about, where we are in this point where we have this last generation of holdouts, so to speak, of folks where they're not, they're like, I don't want to say afraid of technology, but skeptical of what
Which is
technology can
natural.
truly do, you know?
I mean, look at like I never discredit people for that, because even in my lifetime, in the last 30 years, I mean, look what we've gone from.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone from the first iterations of a cell phone, like just the idea of having a phone that's not connected to your wall. My parents still have the phone on the wall at home. You know,
Yep. Yeah.
the purpose to it's disconnected, but it's still sitting there on the wall, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, but we've gone from that to now the world is at your fingertips. At any given moment, you basically, everything that you hear about, I don't care if you're religiously inclined or not, but everything that you hear about in the Bible about God knowing everything, that's you.
Right.
And anytime if you Google the right thing, you at that moment become omniscient. You have the ability to know whatever you would like to know.
Yeah.
And so it's very natural to say, well, you know, we used to use this and this. We used to use a push mower that had blades that just spun on it. Now we have autonomous mowers. Now we have like whatever it is, there's more technology in your pocket than the people that landed on the moon for the first time in the 60s. So, and those people are business owners. And so that's like a very hard conversation that you never really want to like step on someone's toes and say, you know, get with it. But business really is an adapt or die mentality.
Oh, absolutely.
If you don't buy into the way that the market is shifting in these different areas, eventually you're going to get left behind, unless you're like my father, who, you know, like this is very respectable too, just says, I really love what I do and I want to make ends meet. I'm never trying to really expand the scope of my business other than just making sure I can put food on the table and keep the lights on.
Yeah.
That is just as respectable. But from like a business management standpoint, if you're ever trying to really grow it, you got to start buying in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Doug mentioned here, he said he wanted me to make sure I pointed out that Doug himself, he drug his feet a lot in the early days of when he was looking at crew control and property intel and everything. But he said that Zach never pushed me. So, and I know that you guys talked for quite a while before he came on board. You guys kind of back and forth, and he'd come up with other questions because he'd ask me about stuff, and then, you know, and he'd listen to our conversations obviously on the air and everything. But it is a good point. Thanks for bringing that point up, Doug. It is not, for those listening, it is not a high pressure thing. It's not. They're not going to be calling you 17 times a day to check in and see if you're ready to pull the trigger yet.
Yeah, that's my other business where I sell turquoise jewelry over the phone with my yellow pages.
Right. Yellow pages.
There is one, just to round this off, and I really appreciate that, Doug, because that means a lot to me. Everybody talks about chasing a dragon. There's one guy out there, and he listened in the past, so I'm hoping that he's listening now with the transition. But Aaron Walls at Purple Walrus Landscaping.
Aaron Walls.
You are still on my radar, and we talk all the time about whenever the time's right. We usually text each other, you know, every 6 months or so, just to see if the time's right. That's the most you're ever going to get from me, is just checking in to see what you're doing, see how you guys are working. But if you're out there listening, it's time for our text to see where you're at now. So.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen. Well, we're up on the hour. I gotta go make sure the guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I'm going to sign off here. It was good to see you again, Zach, and good talking with you. And I'm looking forward to having you on more often here on Boots on Ground Radio. And
Ground Radio.
I need to come up with another show thing. I need a name for for my show. For this show that we're doing right now, because I had, you know, it'd be weird to do two landscape vets when technically this is two landscape vets because you were in the industry. So
I'm not going to risk stolen valor for landscaping.
No, not that part. But I mean, good point as far as what you're talking about. But I was thinking about that last night because I was like, man, I have like Eric and I do the show in the morning, but then like if I do another show, then it means I need to know a name for that show. I'll figure it out. We'll figure out something because I need intro music anyway for that show. So
All right,
we'll make it happen.
I'll catch you next time, and appreciate it. Excited about the new journey. Boots on the Ground Radio.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. Boots on Ground Radio, folks. Listen in all the time. bootsongroundradio.com. You can find all the new information that is happening as well as some of the featured shows and all that. And then also you can find the flyer, like I said, for the National Prayer Breakfast that is happening at Equip Expo that we will be doing live coverage of. And there's a button there to be able to click on for when we are doing that live coverage. So thanks again, Zach. Have a good day. Don't push people too hard.
Try my best.
And good luck with that dragon.
All right, buddy. I'll catch you later.
Talk to you soon, brother. All right, brothers and sisters, it is time for me to get out of here. And we will be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. And we're bringing on new shows all the time. So keep checking in on the website. We'll get the show schedules here as soon as we have those dates and times confirmed. We're just trying to figure out the time schedules for everybody for these new shows that are coming on. But it will be happening quickly. This thing has blown up way faster than we thought it was going to be. We thought it was going to be kind of like a restaurant when they open and they do a soft opening where it's kind of feeling out the vibes and everything. But this thing has just been full blown off the charts since we started. So we're kind of playing catch up at this point to get everything going as fast as possible. So bear with us, but we are going to be bringing new content every single day. So tune in tomorrow, 7 a.m. Eastern Time for Two Landscape Vets here on Boots on Ground Radio. Signing off.